Hey everyone, my name is Patrick McSweeney, and I am a senior here at U of L. And my journey with cancer began when I was just 5 years old. In June of 2004, I had a case of strep throat. Nothing too terrible, but over the course of the next couple of weeks, I got it two more times. So, in just the short span of a month, I had strep throat a total of three times. And my mom, being a nurse and also, just being my mom, she knew something was wrong. And so she took me up to my pediatrician's office to have some blood work drawn. And the doctor came back into the room and said, nothing is wrong with your son. Sure, what he's experiencing is out of the ordinary, but besides getting sick, you don't really need to be worried about anything. And my mom, being persistent, uh, basically demanded that more blood work be drawn because she just knew that what was going on was not right. And so after the second set of blood work was drawn, the doctor came back in again. And this time, all he said was, you needed to get down to Kozer Children's Hospital immediately. So that's what we did. And by later that evening, I had been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And that was on July 21st in 2004. And after that date, I underwent 38 months worth of chemotherapy and finished my regimen of chemo in September of 2007. And after being in remission for 4.5 years, in April of 2010, I relapsed for the first time. And so we went back to Kozer Children's. I underwent another 26 months worth of chemotherapy. This time the treatment regimen and the chemo itself was a lot more intense, but over a shorter time frame. So it took a little bit more of a toll on my body, and at this time I was 10 years old, and so I was old enough to actually remember and know what was going on. So it was really difficult to get through. And I finished up that chemo regimen in my second fight with cancer in the summer of 2012, more specifically in July of 2012. And about 7.5 months later, in February of 2013, I relapsed for a second time. And at this point, we knew the chemo wasn't a long-term solution, that it wasn't the cure for me. And so we went up to Cincinnati, and that's where I had my first bone marrow transplant done. So in May of 2013, my brother Joey donated some of his bone marrow to me. And on May 14th is when I received it. I was up there for 2 months, but was able to come back late that July and early August of 2013 with experiencing really little to no side effects from the transplant, which was a blessing, but we would later find out that it was almost a curse, because in April of 2014, March of 2014, I relapsed again for the third time now. And the only explanation that the doctors could give us was that my brother Joey's bone marrow was too perfect of a match to mine. And that was most likely the reason for my relapse. And so since chemotherapy, radiation, and a bone marrow transplant all failed to be long-term solutions to my leukemia diagnosis, we decided to try something different. And luckily at the time, we had just heard about an experimental treatment that was going up on in Philadelphia, and that's actually what everyone is talking about now. It's CAR-19 T-cell immunotherapy, and it's what we're trying to bring to Louisville. But in 2014, it was considered experimental, and that's how new it is. I was patient number 34 in their trial, and like all the other treatments, it put me in remission. It worked for a short period of time, but not permanently, because in 2015 I relapsed for a fourth time, and we went back to Philadelphia again. And they used the T-cell treatment again on me, but this time it was modified a little bit, and with this modification and this set of trials that they were trying out on pediatric patients, I was the fourth patient. And after a couple of months of being in remission of this second trial of modified T cells working, I relapsed for a fifth time in 2016. So we kept going up there, and then I got another modified dose of the T cells. This time I got them in combination with a drug called Keytruda. And so this combination of the CAR-19 T-cell immunotherapy and Keytruda, the drug Keytruda, I was the very first patient ever to be in that trial and receive that form of treatment. And just like before, it only kept me in remission for a brief period of time. Now, it was longer than the previous two times. It kept me in remission for about a year and a half or so. But in January of 2018, I relapsed for a sixth and final time. So we went up to Philadelphia to get the T cells, knowing they wouldn't work. They would work, but not permanently. We were using those cells to get me into remission so that I could have a second bone marrow transplant done back in Cincinnati in May of 2018. And this time, we decided to use an anonymous donor, since unfortunately my brother Joey and his bone marrow failed to work the first time. So almost 5 years to the day, I had a second bone marrow transplant done in Cincinnati. It was on May 15th, 2018. And this time, I experienced a lot more side effects. Went through a lot worse than I did in my first transplant. And honestly, there's a lot from that transplant, from that treatment, that I still haven't recovered from, that I never will recover from. I spent 8 months up there. I was up there from May 15th. Actually, May 4th. I had the transplant on May 15th, but we were up there on May 4th of 2018 till January 4th of 2019. Dealing with problem after problem and dealing with each one as they came along, because we couldn't prepare for any of them. We just had to take our punches, roll with them, and get back up off the ground. But it's been hard. And these past couple of years since then have been really difficult. A lot of my life has changed since that transplant. The life I lived 3 years ago is not the life I live now. And that's how it is for a lot of these kids. Cancer affects you forever. Just because you're in remission, just because you're cancer free, doesn't mean you're done with what it's done to you. And that's what some of these stories and these parents have told us throughout the week. The thought of cancer and relapsing is always in the back of our minds. It's not something that goes away, and the pain it causes never goes away either. But some of us learn how to fight and deal with it, and these kids, myself included, we do what we have to survive. And in all honesty, I don't ever say anyone has lost their battle to cancer, because Stuart Scott said, you don't lose your battle to cancer, you win by how you fight and the manner in which you fight. And that has always stuck with me ever since he gave that speech at the ESPYs. And so it's not the kids losing their battle, but it's the treatment that's failing them. And we need better treatments. I have been through everything: chemotherapy, radiation, bone marrow transplants, experimental immunotherapy, which right now is the pinnacle of how we treat kids and children, because it's targeted therapy and it isn't so toxic that it leaves you with lifelong side effects and issues. But the chemo, my bone marrow transplant, and radiation they have, I will never get over truly what cancer has done to me. I can keep moving forward. I can keep making progress. But it's always going to have an impact on my life. And it will always have an impact on these kids' lives. So this marathon, what we do to raise money, it means something. It goes towards these new treatments that can save their life without ruining their life. And this past year, with what's happened in the pandemic and how everyone has been affected, and they've been uncertain of what their health is going to be like, or what their family members' health is going to be like, and their financial status because of what COVID is doing, and wearing masks and feeling isolated. All of that is just a glimpse of what we have experienced as cancer patients. I hope that no one ever gets cancer, but this is the closest that many people will get. And I want you all to think about that and how problematic and how terrible it must be for these kids to go through what they go through if you're already suffering just with this. We need more treatment so that the kids don't feel this way, so that their lives can be saved, and so that one day surviving cancer is not a possibility, and that you're not considered a miracle for beating it, but that it's expected, and that you can live a long and healthy life afterwards. I'm proud to be a survivor, and I know everyone who has survived can say that too. But not everyone can, and I want to change that. I want this marathon to change that, and that's what we're doing. So thank you all.